Welcome to the Oxygen Alliance YouTube channel, where we bring you videos on installation, maintenance, and various trainings on oxygen equipment and devices. If you have comments and or questions, drop them in the comment section below or write to us info@oxygenalliance.org. Remember to like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's partner talk brought to you by the Oxygen Alliance. My name is Redi Kayembe. I'm a biomedical engineer working with the Oxygen Alliance, and I am your host today. I'm joining this call from Lilongwe City, and I am interested in knowing where you are joining us from. So please write your name and where you're joining us from in the chat. And if you would like to receive communications on the upcoming webinars and events from the Oxygen Alliance, may you please type your email address in the chat so we can add you to our emailing list. Today, we are going to continue our medical imaging equipment series by discussing artificial intelligence in medical imaging. This will mark the fifth webinar of this series, and as we have already explained in the previous webinars, that after this series we'll be issuing out certificates of attendance to this webinar. So make sure that at the end of the presentation you fill out the attendance form. A link will be pasted in the chat at the end of the presentation. So our presenter today for today's webinar is none other than Samiiha Nalwooga. She is a biomedical engineer and a data scientist, and she'll share with us knowledge in artificial intelligence in medical imaging. I am personally very excited to learn more about this topic, and I encourage everyone to take notes, as all the questions and comments will be addressed at the end of the presentation. So during the presentation, there will be breaks where we will be launching polls. So I encourage everyone to participate in this polls. So without wasting much of the time, please help me welcome our speaker today to present.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So hello, my name is Engineer Samiiha Nalwooga. I'm from Uganda. Right now I'm based in Washington, DC, and I'm going to be taking you through this topic, AI in medical imaging. So I'm just like what Lloyd has said, I'm a data scientist and a biomedical engineer by profession. I happen to be a member of different AI communities that are international, regional, as well as local in Uganda. Those include Black in AI, Women in Machine Learning, Deep Learning Endeavor, as well as Deep Learning Endeavor ex-Uganda. So I hold a master's degree in computer and system sciences from Stockholm University, and my specialty was in data science and machine learning. And I also hold a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from Makerere University in Uganda. So for today's discussion, we are going to be looking at the introduction to AI. What is AI? We'll have a brief about the history of AI, the different branches of artificial intelligence. Then now we will narrow it down to AI in medical imaging, look at the future of AI in medical imaging, the potential of AI in healthcare in general, as well as the role of biomedical engineers in the advancement of AI in medical imaging diagnostics, because biomedical engineers really play a key role in artificial intelligence when it comes to healthcare. So the first thing we're going to talk about is AI. So what is artificial intelligence? This is just a question that I'm trying to throw to the audience. What do you understand by artificial intelligence before I start? You can put your answers in the chat. What do you understand by AI? So anyway, so to start that journey AI is just a field of computer science, and sometimes it's called machine intelligence. And what it does is it's used to just describe machines that actually emulate or mimic the cognitive functions that humans associate with. So those ones include learning as well as problem solving, because as humans, we have the ability to learn. And then also, after learning, we're able to solve problems. So that is what AI is. In brief, what some people describe it is AI is just the ability to train a computer to think like a human being. So when you look at the history of AI is not something that is new. It's actually very backdated. It was born at a workshop in Dartmouth College in 1956, and it was coined by a gentleman called John McCarthy. So given the fact that AI is backdated, why do we have it very rapidly talked about, or like why is it trending lately? So it's trending lately because number one, of the computational power we have access to more efficient processors that are being provided by companies like Google, companies like Amazon, companies like Nvidia. We also collect a lot of data as we are going, like as I'm presenting this, we're actually collecting data in form of videos and images and text. So there is need for us to collect this data and then be able to use it to train AI models. So we also have access to data storage. We have access to huge data disks, as well as now we even have the ability to store the data on the cloud. For instance, things like AWS, we can store data on Google, so on and so forth. So with all this combined, there is we have the possibility of collecting and storing all this data that needs to be analyzed to extract knowledge out of it. So that is why AI is being talked about, because we now have access to data. We have better and efficient data collection techniques. So now we come to the branches of AI. Like I said, AI is just the ability to make a computer think like a human being. So there are different branches of AI. So let's start from something called machine learning. If you've heard of artificial intelligence before, then you obviously know what machine learning is. So what is machine learning? So machine learning is the ability for you to, is the ability of a machine to learn patterns in data, but it learns patterns in data based on experience rather than you programming it to do it. It just learns, like I said, AI just mimics the cognitive abilities of learning and then solving a problem. So it's able to learn patterns in data, then it's able to make predictions based on the experience without you explicitly having to program it. So with that, we go to something called computer vision. So what is computer vision? Just like its name, computer vision is just AI that sees, the ability of a computer to actually see. That is what computer vision means. Then we also have a branch called speech recognition. That is AI that is able to understand human speech, relate with human speech. So we also have a branch called natural language processing. Natural language processing is just the ability of a computer to process and understand human language. So it is intertwined with speech recognition. Then we also have AI that moves, that is robotics. The ability of computers to actually move. Then we also have another aspect called pattern recognition, the ability of these computers, once given data, to be able to analyze and recognize the patterns in the data. Then it can be able to give us the prediction. So those are the different branches of artificial intelligence. So now the fact that we're looking at AI in medical imaging, that is where we look at something called computer vision, AI that sees. So what is computer vision? Technically, it's just a field or branch of AI that enables computers and systems to derive meaning information from digital images, videos, and any other visual inputs. So what happens is that it then takes actions and is able to make recommendations based on that information that has been given to it. So you could think of it as, if AI enables computers to think, computer vision enables them to see, observe, and understand visual inputs. It could be in form of images or videos. So how does it work? So one thing you should know is that computer vision needs a lot of visual data to work with. So what it does, it just runs analysis, like it just runs analysis of that data over and over until it's able to identify distinctions and ultimately recognize those images. For example, to train a computer to recognize a cancerous image, it needs to be fed with vast amounts of cancerous images and vast amounts of non-cancerous images to learn the differences and recognize what a cancerous image looks like when it's able to see one. So two essential technologies are used to accomplish this. We have a type of machine learning. I explained to you what machine learning is, but we have a particular type of machine learning called deep learning and an algorithm called the convolutional neural network. So every time you see image processing being done, be it through, maybe if they're using a CT scan to do that, they're actually using convolutional neural networks. There are different architectures that perform different tasks, but they're using a convolutional neural network, and that's computer vision. So what is deep learning? So deep learning is the ability to extract useful patterns from data. And how do you extract those patterns? We use algorithms called neural networks. And so how do you use, so what do you use to carry out deep learning practically? Now that's where we look into things like Python. Like, I know you've had Python programming, some of you have heard of it. Then we look at different frameworks like TensorFlow and Keras, as well as PyTorch. We then have CUDA recently. Those ones these are libraries that give us access to these algorithms. They actually abstract all the complexities of you having to code the algorithm from scratch. So that is what those do. So the challenges with deep learning is asking good questions and also obtaining good quality data. I'll give you an example of, there was a time we were working on a project and we wanted to be able to use AI to be able to diagnose if someone was susceptible to having a particular cancer or not, but getting good quality images was a problem. But remember with these algorithms, if you give them good images or good data, they'll be able to give you good results. So garbage in, garbage out, that's the kind of mechanism they work with. So why are we now talking about deep learning? Of course, like I talked about it previously, we actually have data accessible to us, large amounts of data in form of images. This data is gotten, if we take it to the context of healthcare, we have images that have that we can get from those imaging equipment such as CT scan, MRI, X-rays, colposcopy. These are images that we can actually use to train these models. We have access to them because of those imaging equipment that can be able to capture those kinds of images for us. Then we also have access to the hardware, the GPUs and TPUs from NVIDIA and Google, so on and so forth. Then we also have a strong community like GitHub. We have Stack Overflow in case you're coding and then you have an issue, you can always reach out to it. Lately, we have the introduction of ChatGPT that is very, very instrumental and very key when it comes to coding. It can act as your pilot. So it has made life easy. That's why we've been able to like advance when it comes to deep learning. Then we have tools that we are good that we can actually work with, tools like these TensorFlows, the Kerases, the PyTorches, so on and so forth. Then there's also investment that is being geared towards the development of these deep learning models through companies like Google, Amazon, Uber, so on and so forth. So now let's talk about the current applications of computer vision. So computer vision, like I said, it's AI that sees. It can be applied in several tasks. So one of them is face recognition. So if you've seen any device that is able to recognize your face, that is computer vision, is AI. And the branch they're actually dealing with is computer vision. It can also be able to do image classification. Given a set of cancerous and non-cancerous images, this algorithm can actually be, sorry, this branch of AI with the particular algorithms that we'll probably look at is able to classify the image and group it, like which class does it belong to? Does it belong to cancerous or non-cancerous? It's so able to do something called object detection. Given so many objects that are of different types, this kind of technology can be used to actually identify an object of interest, and then it draws a bounding box around it. Then we also have something called semantic segmentation. So what that does is that given an area of interest, it will be able to like classify the pixels in that image and then be able to draw a mask around it, or be able to draw a segment around it. Let me use an example of a cancerous image. Given a cancerous image, computer vision actually has the ability of looking at that image, processing it, identifying which parts of that image are cancerous, and then drawing a mask around it or a segment around it. That's what we call semantic segmentation. We have algorithms and architectures that can actually do that. So here I wanted to just give you an example of what I've been talking about. So for object detection, imagine this is our image. It's going to be able to identify those particular parts that are cancerous and then draw a bounding box or draw bounding boxes around them. That's what object detection does. That is the power of artificial intelligence. And for semantic segmentation, it will be able to identify those particular parts that are cancerous or have a tumor, then draw a mask around it or a segment around it. So that's all the ability of thanks to the ability of AI through computer vision. So what is the building block of deep learning? Like I said, if you go back to my previous slides, computer vision is aided by a branch of AI called machine learning, and specifically we're looking at deep learning. I hope I make sense. So when you look at deep learning, what is it? What's the building block? So the building block for deep learning is a neuron. A neuron is something that I would sort of like try to relate to like the neurons in our brain. This is just an artificial neuron. So that's the building block. It's just a circular unit, and then once it is given inputs, it will be triggered or activated, and it will be able to actually fire an output and go to the next neuron. So that is the building block of deep learning. So if you get several of these neurons and then stack them together sequentially, you'll be able to get a simple neural network. So a simple neural network would have the first layer, which is the input layer, then it would have the hidden layer as well as the output layer. Then if you go on increasing the layers containing neurons in this network, that is when we form a deep learning neural network. So that's the building block of deep learning. So one would wonder, what is the inspiration for neural networks? So actually the inspiration for neural networks is just the human brain. So a neural network was just inspired by how the human brain works, specifically how neurons in our brains communicate and process information. So we know neurons in our brain are just tiny cells that receive and transmit signals in form of impulses. So when we see something, if you look at our brain, when we see something or think about something, these neurons are actually work together by passing signals through connections to figure out what's actually happening. So when you come back to the artificial neural network, what actually happens is it just mimics this process. If you look at it, because we also have a cell body, we have a synapse, we have the output axon, so on and forth. So what is deep learning in a snapshot? I've talked about how deep learning is a type of machine learning. I talked about what machine learning is, and now I want to make life easy, explain what it is in a snapshot. So it's just representational learning. So now we know that deep learning uses algorithms called neural networks. So what happens is, I'm going to take you back to this. It uses algorithms called neural networks. A deep learning model is just a neural network that has several layers of neurons stacked together. So what actually happens is each of these neurons, each of these layers is going to be learning a particular thing given an image. For instance, if I give it an image of anything, the first layer might learn the edges, the second layer will probably learn the contour, the other one will learn the texture, then it will put that information together until it's able to actually predict what is in that image. So that is what we mean by deep learning. It's just representational learning. Each of these layers, this is the input layer, will learn something. The first hidden layer will learn the edges, second, given this image. Second hidden layer will learn the contours. Third hidden layer will learn the object parts. And then when it comes to the output, it will like the output layer, it will try to sort of like sum up everything that has been learned at every stage, and it will be able to constitute an image and be able to predict what actually is in that image. So we have basic steps of deep learning. First of all, we start simple. We have a neural network that has been designed using TensorFlow. Then we feed an input into it. Then we can see that our network is actually able to accurately tell that the digit in the image it has been the digit in the image that has been fed into it is a 5, and it even gives you a probability or a confidence level of yes, we predict it's a 5 with a confidence level of 87%. So if you look on my right, this is just a code snippet just trying to show you how easy it is to actually dive into deep learning. So we can actually develop a simple deep learning model, number one, by doing what? We just import the libraries or the frameworks that I talked about, like the TensorFlow and the Keras. Then if you look at step number 2, we're just loading that data set, getting it, and then splitting it into the training and the test set. Then the third one is where we set up our deep learning model. Then the fourth is where we actually train or model fit. That actually means that we're just now training the model on the images that we've actually the images that we wanted to predict. Then the fifth step is where we do the evaluation, where we want to evaluate and see, I've trained this model, has it been able to understand? Then step number 6 is where we deploy and start making the predictions in the real world. So with just these 6 simple steps, you can be able to actually design a simple deep learning model that can do predictions.
Yes. Now a poll question will be launched. I want everyone of you to attend to that poll question. Right. So the first poll questions, the first poll question reads, yeah, computer visions need a lot of data to recognize images. So I will need every one of you to attend to this question. Please, for those that are not able to access the post, please, you can go on your right bottom of the screen. If you're using a laptop, you'll find a button that is indicated by squares, circle, and a triangle. When you click there, you find polls, and there you can be able to answer the polls. Please, I need everyone to attend to these poll questions. And there's another poll question that says, what is your understanding of AI? So for this one, I want you to type in the answer in the Q and A section. And for those that don't know how to access the Q and A section, you can still go on that the same button that I've talked about, the activities button, and you find the Q and A section. That's where you will type in your answer. Please do that. We really need to know how you have understood the AI concept. I'll give you just a few seconds to type in the answers, and I'll hand it over to Samiiha. All right, Samiiha, over to you. You can continue the presentation as people will be typing in the Q&A section.
Thank you so much. So in my previous segment of the conversation, I've been talking about neural networks and deep learning. I'm sorry I have to take you this way, but it will start making, like, it's always good for you to learn the basics before you get into the simplicities of all. So how do these neural networks function? You've talked about deep learning, I've talked about neural networks. So you're wondering, how do they function? So when it comes to artificial intelligence, and now let's look at that particular algorithm called neural networks. We have something called the training stage. So for instance, if I want to train my model to be able to recognize a cancerous and non-cancerous image, let me use that example. That means that I'll be able to get a batch of images that I will assign to the training class and then also the testing class. So by that I mean I'm going to have a training stage and the testing stage. I would relate that to us. For instance, when you go to school, we actually attend classes, we give an examples in class, But then when we at the end of it all, we expected to like sit for exams. So we usually see more new things coming in that we never studied in class. But if you actually understood the concepts in class, you can be able to generalize in an exam and be able to pass it. So it's the same thing with the functionality of the neural network. So we have a learning system that is a neural network. We have input data, and then that input data also so we have that input data. Then that input data also includes the correct labels. By that I mean, if I want to teach my model how to differentiate between a cancerous and non-cancerous image, I'll show it that this is an image of a cancerous image. This is how a cancerous image looks like. This is how a non-cancerous image looks like. So through that process, it's able to learn the pattern. It's able to learn, and then in the end, it will be able to like solve a new problem. Like given a new image it has never seen, to be able to classify and tell if it's cancerous or not. So after training it, we also have something called the testing stage. I have trained it on how a cancerous image looks like, a non-cancerous image looks like. Now I want to test it and see if it's actually learned. So with this, we use new input data. By that I mean I use examples I've never trained it on, because if I test it using the examples I used to train it on, it will be able to give me 100%. I won't be able to know if it understood what I taught it or not. So then there it will be able to make the best guess, what we usually call the prediction in artificial intelligence. So through this functionality, we have two things we use, or like we have two terms that we use. We have the forward pass and the backward pass. So that will take me back to this slide. I'm sorry for taking you back. So if it's a forward pass, I'm going to have inputs going through these different neurons. Then of course there is going to be some mathematical computations that are going to take place, like adding the weights and then summing them up and then adding a bias, so on and so forth. Then after that, after giving them inputs, the neurons are going to be triggered, and therefore they're going to be able to fire outputs that will act as input to these neurons in the hidden layer. So that is what we call the forward path. However, when they reach this hidden layer, remember we were already giving them out like labels, what we expect to receive. So if these outputs go to these layers, and then they're able to compare and see that they've actually made a wrong decision or a wrong choice, you're going to have something called the backward pass, or we call the back propagation, whereby it will compute the error. By that I mean it will try and match the correct image and what this neural network is actually producing. So it will compute the error. If the error is high, it will not allow it to propagate and go back to the output layer. It will just propagate it back to the input layer, adjust the weight and the bias until it's able to make a correct prediction. So that's what makes neural networks very powerful, the back propagation concept. So that is what I mean by this, the back propagation. So whereby you actually get the gradient from the output layer, then push it back to its original input layer by adjusting the weight and the bias to make sure that the error is minimized. So when you talk about image classification, one of the things that we should not forget is what we are looking out for is, take an example of this. We have an image, or we have images that are 28 by 28. 28 by 28 is just the same size of the image. That means the width is 28 pixels and the height is 28 pixels. And each of these images contain a digit. So when I feed these images into my input layer of the neural network, of course, they will be propagated into the hidden layer, then finally into the output layer. So the task of image classification is to ensure that each of these input corresponds, like is propagated through the hidden layers and is taken to its rightful output. So we expect the image 5 to actually activate this output neuron 5, because that's where it's supposed to end up, and also give us a probability. So that's what it's all about. We expect the 0 to be propagated through the network, and it ends up being detected by the neuron that is responsible for detecting the number 0, so on and so forth. So we've talked about deep learning. Like we said, computer vision is aided by a type of machine learning called deep learning, and an algorithm called the convolutional neural network. So now we have an idea of what deep learning is and what actually goes on behind the scenes. Now let's look at something called the convolutional neural networks. So these are the deep learning algorithms that we use to perform image classification tasks. So how do they work? So for the convolutional neural networks, they have different layers. So one of them is called the convolutional layer. So the name convolutional neural networks is derived from this layer called the convolutional layer. So this is the input, which is the image, and what does the convolutional layer does? What does it do? Let's imagine it as being a scanner that moves across the image piece by piece. So this layer works just like a scanner. So the scanner, what it does, you know, the scanners we have in our offices, it looks for specific patterns in small parts of the image, like the edges, the contours, the shape. So for instance, if you're trying to, let me use an example of if you're trying to scan a photo of a dog, what the scanner will do, it will look for things like the curve of its ear or the shape of its nose. So that's what this particular layer does. Then to it, we have something called the ReLU. So the ReLU, what happens is after scanning, this part will help clean up the information by removing any useless details, unhelpful details, for instance, the negative values, making sure that only the important patterns are go through. So what I forgot to tell you is maybe the way we look at images is not the way computers look at images. No, they look at images in form of pixel values. Those are digits. They don't look at images the way we do. Like I'm saying an image, no. Each of those small parts of an image are assigned a pixel value. So that's how they look at it. So now that we know what the convolution and the ReLU does, after all this scanning is done by this layer, we now go to the pooling layer. What does the pooling layer do? So once this scanner, what we refer to as the pooling layer, is done with its work, it sends that image to the pooling layer. What does the pooling layer do? So once the pooling layer receives this image, it's going to actually simplify this image by shrinking it further. But then it shrinks it while keeping sort of like the features intact. It's like zooming out, but still being able to recognize the main parts of the image. Then you can have several convolutional and pooling layers. For this case, we have two of them, two layers containing the convolutional and the pooling. And what these are actually doing in brief, like to summarize everything I've been explaining, these are just doing feature extraction. They're just feature learning. They're learning the features in the images that have been given to it. Then after that, they'll send it to these particular layers that do the actual classification. So we have something called the flattened layer. So what this flattened layer does, it receives this image from the pooling layer. It's a 2D image. Then it's going to like reduce it or compress it to a 1D vector that can only be processed. Like these fully connected layers only process the 1D vectors. So when it comes to the fully connected layer, what it does is after all the scanning and simplifying, this part puts everything together, just like piecing together like clues to understand the whole image. And this is also known as the decision layer most of the case. Then we also have the output layer, whereby after the scanning is done, the simplifying, the analyzing, the CNN will actually, by CNN I mean the convolutional neural network, it will make its sort of like best guess about what the image shows. Is the image cancerous? Is the image or non-cancerous? So that's just the nitty-gritties of the convolutional network. It has two parts. It has the layers that do feature learning, then the layers that actually do the classification. So we go to the next part. This is the most interesting part. After learning about AI, we went to the branches. We looked at computer vision. We looked at what makes up computer vision. We looked at deep learning. Then we looked at convolutional neural networks and how they work. Now it's time for us to talk about the current applications and innovation of AI in medical imaging. So this is an innovation from Uganda by a team at Makerere University, and they call themselves the Ocular team. The technology behind it is that a 3D printable smartphone adapter has been designed by the Ocular team, And why and why it was designed, it was to be used with microscopes, leveraging smartphones already in the healthcare centers. So the design was, or is, the adapter actually attaches to a microscope's eyepiece and uses sort of like sliders and slide holders to align a smartphone. These are the adapters to sort of like align a smartphone of nearly any model for image capture. So once it is aligned, the smartphone can easily slide in and out of the adapter without losing the sort of like the preset alignment. So the purpose is, so after doing that, the AI in this technique, what I've been describing is not the AI, but the AI in this technique is that they have actually used computer vision to design algorithms that process images that have been captured using a microscope. So this actually helps microscopists efficiently identify pathogens in malaria, tuberculosis, as well as cervical cancer. So that's the AI aspect of this innovation. It's not the microscope and the adapters, it's actually the algorithm that has been designed to process those images that have been taken using a microscope. And after processing them, it can be able to tell if those images actually contain pathogens in malaria, tuberculosis, as well as cervical cancer. So I have actually left a link in my presentation. You can click on it and then go and visit the website and see the interesting work that is being done using artificial intelligence in our own countries in Africa. So the other one is just a technology that has been developed by MIT. And what it did is that it developed a deep learning model to predict breast cancer risk from mammograms. Mammograms, we all know what they are. These are images that have been taken during the mammography procedure. So given these images, this deep learning model, which is a CNN, has actually been used to predict breast cancer. So the model can predict the likelihood of developing breast cancer up to 5 years in advance. So that shows you how AI is very powerful. It has that predictive ability. Given the current information and the past information, it can actually predict the future. Then the training data, it was trained on mammograms and outcomes from over 60K patients at that Massachusetts General Hospital. Look at the functionality. What the model does is it actually identifies the distinct patterns in breast tissue that signal the early development of malignant tumors. So we have another application. This is something that was developed by Google, and it was developed for, and I think the first pilot test was in India. So what Google did was it developed AI algorithms, of course, using convolutional neural networks. Now we know about the AI that sees to analyze medical images, particularly eye scans. So the AI diagnoses conditions such as the diabetic retinopathy and age-related macular degeneration. So Google's system can recommend correct referral decisions for over 50 eye diseases, and this has been tested. So the accuracy the AI performs with the accuracy of expert clinicians in diagnosis. And it has been able to do that because it has been fed with vast amounts of data. Like I said, AI needs plenty of data. So then we have another one. This is also made in Uganda. It's called Emergent AVI. And what it does is it's just an AI-powered cervical cancer screening platform. So what happens is the imagery is taken using a medical procedure called colposcopy. Then these images are actually fed into the computer vision models that will assist health practitioners by telling them, given an image, is someone susceptible to having cervical cancer or not? So what it does, it just looks out for the cancerous lesions in those images. And then once it spots them, it's actually able to know that, yeah, since there is a presence of cancerous lesions, this person is susceptible to having cervical cancer or not. Then it can be able to aid, to assist healthcare practitioners. So I've used examples of what's currently happening, and now I'm trying to talk about the future of AI in medical imaging. What is the future? So one of them is AI-powered imaging devices. So by that I mean AI will become fully embedded. It's something that's going to become rampant even in Africa, fully embedded within imaging devices, such as we're going to have things like smart city. They might be there, they are there, but they're not rampantly used in Africa. But we're going to see more of that. And that will be good because it will help in real-time diagnostic when it comes to medical imagery. So I'll take you back to these examples. This is an example that has been made in Africa. It's been made in Uganda, but you can see that the technology is not standalone. That, like, in the future, we are going to see more of these colposcopy equipment or devices being designed, but the AI is embedded into them. It's not going to be a standalone. It's going to be embedded within them, whereby my colposcopy will do the imaging. After doing the imaging, it will do the real-time analysis. I won't have to get the images, then feed them into a deep learning model separately. Same thing with this. In the near future, we're going to have more of the AI being embedded in the microscope itself. Instead of now me having a microscope, then I have a smartphone, and then I have to place the smartphone on the eyepiece, then I have to sort of like develop these adapters that I will use to attach my microphone to the eyepiece and sliders. So we're gonna have more microscopes that have the AI embedded inside of it. That's the future. More of them coming up. So the other one is the 3D and augmented reality. So we're gonna see more of integrations, like AI being integrated with 3D imaging and augmented reality to assist surgeons in visualizing complex anatomical structures during procedures. The other one is personalized medicine. AI will be will give more patient-specific diagnostics, whereby we'll have cases of medical images being analyzed alongside patient data like genetics, your lifestyle, and medical history to provide personalized or tailored treatment plans. The other one is, of course, early disease diagnosis. It's being done, but it's not really that rampant because so much is being talked about and so much is going on when it comes to regulating AI. But we'll see AI will improve the accuracy and speed of disease detection by identifying complex, large patterns often overlooked by human radiologists. I'll give an example of, imagine you're a radiologist in a hospital and you're supposed to look at 100 images a day. After your 50th image, you'll probably be tired because our brains really do get tired. But AI has the ability to perform this without being tired because it doesn't have a brain. So the potential of AI in healthcare in general, we have it being widely used in medical imaging and diagnostics. I've shown you several examples, one from Google, the other one from the two from Uganda, the ocular and emergent AVI. So we're seeing it being used in medical imaging and diagnostics. It's actually supporting that need. Then we also have the potential of it being used in personalized medicine, whereby if I give it my medical history, my lifestyle, my genetics, like summary, then as well as the imaging, it can be able to actually recommend a tailored plan for me that works for me as a patient. Then the other is predictive analytics and early disease detection. Like I said, AI has the ability to predict the future, given the current and the past. It has the ability, of which us as humans is a bit hard, but it has the ability to do that. Then we also have things like robotic surgery. We have the Da Vinci. I've seen the Da Vinci robotics. You could Google that. It's called Da Vinci. It's now being used in a surgery, but it's actually semi-automated. It's working, but there is like a human being that is controlling it to like move those robotic arms to do the surgery. But in the future, I foresee more of robots actually doing the surgery without a surgeon being there. It will be an automated process, though I don't know how that will go. Then we also have things like virtual health assistants. Right now, you've heard of things like Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant. That is all artificial intelligence. They're actually just tapping into the power of natural language processing. But now we're going to see more of those things being used in the hospitals and not only in our everyday lives. Because right now I can tell Alexa to play music for me and it will do it. They're actually just playing around with speech recognition, natural language processing. So you're going to see more of that being applied in the healthcare field. So this brings me to this now. I've talked about AI, I've talked about the different branches, I've talked about computer vision, I've talked about what is currently happening, I've talked about the potential of AI in the healthcare field. So how can we as biomedical engineers contribute to the advancement of this technology in the medical imaging diagnostics? So number one is regulatory compliance. So by that, I would want to speak to that. I mean, we have all these technologies that are being developed. They're being developed by computer scientists. I at least happen to have done biomedical engineering and then ventured into AI. At least I have like an idea of the principles of medicine. But you're gonna find that people who are designing these algorithms are not like domain experts. They do not know the importance of adhering to things like confidentiality, so on and so forth. So there needs to be sort of like there needs to come a time whereby the biomedical engineers in the healthcare field have to come and sit at the table with these computer scientists or engineers who are developing these algorithms to ensure that these algorithms they develop and then integrate into these systems actually comply with the healthcare regulations such as FDA or CE mark approvals. You, the biomedical engineers, know the importance of that, but these computer scientists don't know. For them, it's all about, it's like a game. It's about developing a model that will be able to predict, let me say, maybe a cancer that is very dangerous, like a cancer that is very dangerous for human health, and it's able to develop it to like predict that cancer at expert level accuracy. But if you go into the healthcare field, it's more than it's like there is more than what meets the eye. It's not about the accuracy it gives. Have you put the other principles into consideration? So that is where we biomedical engineers have to come in and help and work hand in hand with them. So the other one is algorithm development. You're gonna find that when it comes to computer scientists, they're actually experts in developing these algorithms, but they don't have the knowledge when it comes to the hardware. So that is where the biomedical engineers gonna have to come in and also help in developing these algorithms. You can learn how to design, train, and validate AI models, and then pre-process medical like images to reduce the noise as well as enhance quality. So this comes in handy on their side as well as your side. It doesn't kill to have an idea of both sides. Then we have the other one, which is integration of AI with imaging devices. Like I've said, an example that I've given, we've seen so many examples of AI being a standalone from the from the equipment that does the medical imaging. So this is where the medical engineers have to come in to bridge that gap. We are tired of seeing cases whereby I have to get like a CT scan to do the imagery, then I get the images, feed them into a machine learning model that can be deployed through the web or the mobile phone. So with biomedical engineers on board, you can be able to come up with avenues in which you're going to integrate this AI into this medical equipment. For instance, we look at things like having a smart CT scan. Like I go and they do medical, like they perform a medical imaging procedure on me. The CT scan does that, but then it gives me the results instantly. It does the imaging, but it's also able to process using AI to tell me what exactly is wrong. Then the other one is the aspect of human AI interaction design. As biomedical engineers, in all our curriculums, when it comes to biomedical engineering design, we know things that are related to human-centered design. There is need for the producers or developers or designers of these systems to put the end user into mind. So this is something that can best be fronted, or let me say, fronted and worked on using biomedical engineers. You've learned those principles in class, you practice them on a daily. This is something you can also bring to the table, and that will in turn help to enhance clinician AI interaction by ensuring that we design systems that are intuitive, that have intuitive interfaces and workflows for easy interpretation and seamless integration into the medical practice. Then the other one is the aspect of validation and clinical trials. So biomedical engineers here are very key because these are equipment equipment or devices that are being developed for the medical field, but before they're deployed, they have to go through a process. I would speak for Uganda. Before you actually put any of this on the market, you need to go through the IRB, that's the Institutional Review Board, and also need to do clinical trials. So this is where biomedical engineers come in to validate these AI algorithms with clinical data, ensure that these devices actually are complying with the current regulations in the medical field, as well as regulations that are set by our different countries. They can also help monitor long-term impact through sort of like post-market surveillance for safety and efficacy.
All right, so right now a poll will be launched. So I need you to attend to the poll. So as we did with the first question, I need you to answer the first 4 questions in the Q&A section. So the first question to be answered in the Q&A section is, what do you think are the potentials of AI in healthcare? So please do attend to this question and answer your thoughts in the Q&A section. I'll give you just a second to attend to these questions. All right, so Samiiha, thank you so much for the wonderful and informative presentation. We have really learned a lot from you. And right now, I would like to open the floor to questions and comments. So please feel free to type your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will acknowledge you and give you the opportunity to ask the question. Again, before you leave the call, make sure that you fill out the attendance form that we have pasted in the chat. All right, so I've seen one question from Jerry Douglas. It says, it must be hard to validate a neural network because it's kind of a black box, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So yes, neural networks are a black box, given the fact that I could probably be able to explain the back propagation and the forward pass. It doesn't really tell you how it has been able to come up with the predictions. So that's one of the hottest topics. Actually, I don't know if it still is, but previously it was one of the hot topics whereby people from the medical field were coming out and were saying, fine, you want us to adopt these models, but we want to understand, want to be able to find out how do they come up with these predictions. And neural networks were some of those that were talked about. A neural network is a black box. It is a black box. However, there are different metrics that are actually being used to validate the performance of the neural network. It's not only based on the accuracy, because accuracy can be wrong. Like, we never rely on accuracy. Accuracy is just like the first step for you to tell that, oh yeah, my model is compatible with my data set. But we go beyond that and look at things like the precision, the average recall, and the ROC AUC. So the ROC AUC is the greatest, because that one helps you tell if your model is actually able to differentiate between the classes. How well is it doing when it comes to differentiating between cancerous and non-cancerous? So yeah, like that's what I would tell you. It's a black box. However, recently, there in research, there are discussions around interpretable machine learning and AI, and we have various algorithms that have actually been used. For instance, we have the sharp method, whereby the sharp method is able to describe and tell you how the algorithm is actually coming up with the predictions. Then some have actually opted to use simple machine learning algorithms like decision trees, because just like a tree, it will explain to you how it has come up with an answer. For instance, if it wants to tell if someone is female or male, the decision tree will be able to tell you that, yeah, I've looked at maybe she has hair, then she has makeup. I'm just giving an example. It's not really professional, but the fact that she has hair, she's wearing earrings, she has makeup, then she's female. So we have such algorithms that are able to actually tell you or interpret how it has come up with results. Then you also have technologies that have been developed that can assist neural networks in actually interpreting the results. Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Samiiha, for that detailed answer. So I also had a question. So this one came from around the ocular technology. I'm just interested in how much data, just typically, one might need to train these models. For example, in the ocular technology, how many pictures does one need to have in order to successfully train these models?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. I've been asked that question before. How much data do we need? By little, what do you mean? By a lot, what do you mean? So how I can explain that is it needs as much data as you can give it. There is nothing like excess data. So you're gonna find that when it comes to things, I happen to know the team lead of Ocular. I never worked on the project, but you're gonna find that it wasn't easy for them to actually get access to all those data sets to be able to train it so that it gets to the state it's in now, that it can actually do actual predictions. So what they did, or what people usually do, is there are those augmentation, we call it image augmentation techniques. Given the fact that you do not have enough data to work with, the techniques that we use to increase the data artificially. So some of them would be rotating the image horizontally, rotating it vertically, like such things. Like that is what people use because it's hard for you to get enough data to train these algorithms. So that's where we use those kind of techniques when you're training our data, the different augmentation techniques. You change it horizontally, you change it vertically, then you play around with like the resolution of the image just to increase it, but you're doing it artificially. So that's the beauty with neural networks as well, because they can also allow you to do that. Because when we're designing them, they knew getting access to data would be hard. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yes, very much. So there's also another question in the chat. It says, how can we address biases in AI training data that may affect diagnostic outcomes?
So this is a very hot topic. How we can address biases. First of all, let me give you an example. When you were growing up, whatever I know now, the accent that I have, everything that I do it because that was the data that I was trained on. That is why we're different in life. You're going to find someone behaving in such and such a way. It's because of the data that they were trained on as they were growing up. So, number one, how can we address biases? One of the things we need to do if we are to address biases in the data, in the training data, we look at the data itself. That's where the biases are. So we actually address the biases in the data before we feed it into the neural network. Because whatever you teach the model is what it's going to give you, garbage in, garbage out. If you train it biased on a certain thing, it's biased because of the data that you're giving to it. I'll give you an example of, there was a time, I think it was in the 2018, 2019, when Google deployed the AlexNet. That was the first computer vision architecture that actually performed so well on any image given to it, be it a cat or a dog, so on and so forth. So there was a time that a certain lady uploaded an image, and that algorithm was able to tag that lady as a gorilla. So that was bias. But it was bias that was in the images that it was given to it. So what we do is, when it comes to biases, we deal with the data set. So how did they deal with such a problem? Because it was a scandal, you can Google it. What happened is they went to the data set and they removed the class gorilla. They removed it because it was able to flag her as gorilla, and the Black community stood out. Oh, they're calling us gorillas. Oh, they're designing their models. But it's because people actually did not understand how these algorithms think. It's not the developers that did that. It's how the model was able to look at an image of a gorilla and an image of this person who was posing, and it accidentally, for it, if you look at that image, actually, it was hard for it to tell if this is a human being or a gorilla. I'm sorry to tackle that very hard aspect. But so what they did, they went to the data set and then they removed that class gorilla. So that's number one. So we have to address them by looking at the attributes in our data, and then be able to clean and play around with them accordingly.
All right. I hope that was clear. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. The explanation. So,
okay,
Yeah, so I want to say, with interest of time, I see there is another question, but with interest of time, we might not take it.
So I
Yeah,
did
but
classification of prostate cancer in my final year project last year, but there was a challenge of getting high quality images and also health facilities are finding it hard to share out the data sets. How do we go about it, especially for students? Yes, this is something that is not only affecting you, it isn't affecting you alone. That is why we don't have so many innovations when it comes to the healthcare, because number one, getting access to that data is hard. You have to go through a lot of like bureaucratic processes. Personally, my master's, I wanted to do a project in health, but I couldn't because I realized I had 6 months to work on my thesis and I was taking 6 months to get access to the data. So that's something that has to be discussed with the Ministry of Health or those who are involved to actually sort of like take on and accept and accept that AI is the end thing. And if you want the problems to be solved in the healthcare sector, then you have to make it easy to gain access to the data sets. They'll be able to sensitize the different healthcare, like the different health centers that are tasked with doing that, and then they'll probably be able to release the data sets. But one of the reasons why they make it hard to release the data sets to you is because of the confidentiality bit. I've had those conversations before where people ask you, fine, you want to get access to this data. How are we going to sort of like protect the confidentiality of our patients? We're not sure if your models cannot be hacked, then the patient information is going to be exposed. So usually you have to write down like several pages explaining to them how you're going to make the data confidential. So with regards to high quality images and how to go about that, there are platforms online whereby they publish these data sets. There is one called Zindi, there is one called Kego. So they realized that there was a lack of getting, like a challenge of getting these images. So what they did was to actually publish websites whereby those websites have web pages that publish publicly available data sets that can be used by anyone who wants to carry out like a machine learning task. Yeah, Zindi, there is Kego, there is Fruit Punch AI. There are several where you can go and try to access. And I'm sure there is one for prostate cancer because they have so many cancer DBs images to work with. Yeah.
all right. Thank you so much for that clear explanation. So right now, I would want to say that this marks the end of this call. Thank you so much, Samiiha, for this great presentation. We have really learned a lot from you. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to send them to us. We'll link you up with Samiiha and we'll give out the answers to you. So make sure you paste your email in the chat. All right, so until next time, please have a wonderful day, the rest of you.